Hello, everyone. I'm Kibin Alleyne, and today is Tuesday, June 27th. You are now watching Open, a live program bringing the Bronx and New York City straight to you. Don't forget to stay connected with us via social media at BronxNet TV. Organization Consumer Reports teamed up with filmmaker Alice Gu to create three short films that explore how biases in algorithms and data sets can perpetuate the unfair treatment of communities of color, often without their knowledge. The project, titled Bad Input, explores three specific areas: facial recognition, medical devices, and mortgage lending. Let's take a quick look at the trailer Bad Input by Consumer Reports.
Our movements are tracked, our tastes and likes, every click of everything we do online is being tracked. Everyone in America is being surveilled.
We have succumbed to the notion that we should give up our anonymity. Your anonymity is such a gift.
Increasingly, we're recognizing that a lot of the tools we use every day are rooted in data that are both very old and very racist.
I don't think that the everyday civilian is aware of the role that algorithms are playing in our day-to-day lives.
If an algorithm is involved in you not getting something important, like insurance or some other thing, you have the right to know.
There are many possible different definitions of discrimination or unfairness. Some of them conflict with each other. The first one I always ask is one group experiencing a positive outcome at a higher or lower rate than another group?
Deputy Editor of Special Projects at Consumer Reports, Brian Vines, now joins me to discuss this project. Brian, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Now, I'm really excited to talk about this because I really like, technology and seeing ways that, it has changed over time, whether that be for the better or for the worse. But can you tell me the overall project, or can you tell me more about the overall project, Bad Input?
Bad Input, as you just showed some of, is a series of three short films that deal with this overarching idea of discriminatory technology. And discriminatory technology showing up in the ways in which algorithms, which are these large, complex data sets that really inform some of the ways that we live, from the sort of sublime to the ridiculous, from Netflix or Spotify saying, you might like this music, or you might want to watch this next based on what you've watched or liked before, to something as consequential as whether you get a mortgage or what your insurance rate you're going to pay, or if you get this home or this job. So it really touches our lives in so many different ways. So we wanted to take a step back and look at what's informing these math problems that are essentially informing so much of how we live and achieve, and our comfort and ease at moving through the world through this lens of race, and see how they really are impacting and how they can be changed, and what interventions we need to make that work more fairly for everyone.
Now, I really like what you mentioned, because I think that as more people, social media and technology, and how much we're online has impacted our lives. And I noticed that people say the algorithm, so casually, like it's a part of everyday language now. But I was shocked to see how much there is that we don't know about it. Can you just talk about how the algorithm has changed with the advancement of technology? I remember when I first heard about it, it was really just talking about what posts or what pictures you'd see when you're scrolling on social media. And as you mentioned, it has grown so much. So can you just talk about how it's changed with the advancement of technology?
Absolutely. One of the things that was really eye-opening for us during this entire process, everyone at Consumer Reports and the filmmakers who made this as well, was even pinning down what an algorithm or artificial intelligence is, and how those things enter the room, like from our ideas in the popular culture to what technologists in technology, and just the middle ground of all of the ideas of what an algorithm is, or what technology is in that context. So algorithms have, particularly in the case of the film where we're talking about mortgage lending, have entered as sort of this idea that technology is the big fix where we're going to erase all of these isms and bad actions of the past because we're going to remove this human aspect from it, right? So instead of the man sitting behind the desk looking at your mortgage application is like stamping this one for those people and like making these people come through. We're going to get rid of that guy because we've got these math problems and we're just going to put data, and it's not going to be about race or sex or class or gender. It's going to be about just the hard numbers on the page, and that's going to be the great equalizer. But you can't start from zero. So what an algorithm essentially does is this sort of deep learning where you got to feed the machine before it can come to some conclusion. So in order to feed the machine, we can't start with the person who walks in. If the two of us walk into a mortgage office and they say, oh, we've had one person apply for a mortgage, we're going to compare your data to their data and see which of these we think is less risky. That's not enough. They need these huge data sets. So, instead of starting with these two people, we have 100 years worth of data of people applying for these loans. So let's feed this into the machine. So those folks in the past may have equated race with risk. So that's the bad thinking that we wanted to get rid of by introducing machines and numbers to this. But you can't tell the machine this was the bad thinking. They just look at the data. So the bad input of the discriminatory practices that figured into so much of that decision making before got fed into these algorithms and machines as the basis for how we make our decisions. So we removed the bad actors, but we kept the bad ideology, and it's continuing to replicate over and over and over again.
Now, you talked a little bit about the mortgage lending. I really want to focus on the fact that one of the films highlights facial recognition, which is, a lot of people have opinions on that. Can you just talk about, in what ways is facial recognition being used in everyday society and how the film explored that?
Facial recognition, it's almost hard to overstate how much facial recognition is being used. From one example that we all readily sign up for, right? This idea of the ease at looking at my mobile device and it recognizing me based on the data points that have been programmed into it. So it's something as easy as looking at your phone and being able to access it. That is facial recognition. But there's also a level of facial recognition that happens for some people across picking up your kids at a daycare center. It's like you look up at the camera, all right, you're on our approved list. There's also even getting into your home and accessing whether it's public housing. We've seen a lot of communities across the country who say we don't want to have this because we feel like we're being surveilled. And it also comes to play in luxury developments where it's like, oh, I have the ease. I have my virtual doorman. It's going to let me in. So we see it at every sort of point of entry. But this idea that facial recognition is just really mapping the face. But what can be done with that? There are cases that we've seen across the country where criminal justice becomes involved, where to this point, it's only been Black men specifically who have suffered the ill consequences, not of being recognized, but being misidentified.
That kind of leads to one of the questions that we did a segment on this previously, how people are using facial recognition to stop, theft from happening in stores or to help law enforcement. I wanted to know what were your thoughts on that and, how this could actually be a danger.
So one of the ways in which facial recognition is around us so much, and listen, I work at Consumer Reports, we're very concerned with making a fairer, more just, safe marketplace. And that also has to do with the experience of being at a shop. And so much of this technology has come in under the guise of loss prevention. So in order for things not to be stolen or for us to catch these bad actors, we need to know who these people are and be able to recognize their face. And we see people and companies, technologists actively working on not just keeping us all safe from the ills of people stealing or doing bad things or causing bodily injury in stores, but it transfers into this idea of mapping out shopping for you and what products come to what communities.
I
And
want to
really,
also, I'm
yeah,
sorry, because we have about like 3 minutes left. So I also wanted to talk about how it affects us in the healthcare system as well. Can you quickly just let us know, how this technology is also perpetuating racism in healthcare?
again, it's going back to that title, the bad input. There's so much of medical history that has worked to codify this idea that there's a difference between races, and they have an idea back in the bad old days. Hopefully, those ideas are starting to fade, but we still see medical students entering school who think that Black people and other folks of color have a higher pain threshold than other folks, things that are just not medically accurate, but still persist because of bad ideas that we have. So it manifests in the ways that medicine centers white males, healthy white males, as the default for humanity. And we focused on this pulse oximeter, which a lot of us came to know during the COVID pandemic. And it was a device. It continues to be a device that you can go down to CVS or Target right now and buy, that distributes light across your finger to get an idea of your blood oxygen level. And it was not made with Black people in the controls and the test to an extent that it would have been as effective. So it's a device that's more effective for lighter skinned folks and not give accurate readings for Black people and darker skinned folks. So this is just like one little device that's sort of the manifestation of this idea that white male health is the default for all of humanity. And that continues through technology and these algorithms that we're seeing are present right now.
Well, Brian, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk about this. As I mentioned, I find technology to be super interesting. And when we add all of this, it just complicates it so much more. So, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about this.
Thanks so much for the conversation. I appreciate it.
Don't go away. We'll be back with more Open right after this.